Good morning. This June 16th meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called to order in the interest of providing health and safety as we continue to deal with this COVID pandemic. The Board of Estimates will continue to meet virtually. At this time, I would like to call on Comptroller Henry for any corrections, additions, or noted abstentions. Comptroller Henry, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are no changes or corrections to this morning's agenda. There is one protest on pages 50 and 51. Department of Finance Fiscal 2022 Visit Baltimore Incorporated Baltimore Tourism Improvement District Financial Plan and Special Assessment Rate. A protest was received from Lewis C. Fields, President of the Baltimore African American Tourism Council Incorporated. There are no deferrals or withdrawals. The following items are moved to the non-routine agenda. On page 7, Space Utilization Committee, Mayor's Office of Cable and Communication, third extension and amendment of lease with Cordish Power Plant Number 2, LLC. And on pages 50 to 51, Department of Finance, Fiscal 2022, Visit Baltimore Incorporated, Baltimore Tourism Improvement District Financial Plan and Special Assessment Rate. No items are being moved to the routine agenda. There is one abstention from Deputy Director of DPW Matthew Garbark on pages 48 to 49, Department of Human Resources, employment agreement with the Director of Public Works designate Jason Mitchell. There are no other abstentions. That is all of the changes to the agenda, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this time, I now direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated June 14th, 2021, identifying matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with the corrections and additions that have been noted by the Comptroller. I will entertain a motion at this time to approve all items contained in the routine agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving the items on the routine agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda is now adopted. The first item of business on the desk from non-routine perspective can be found on page 7, Space Utilization Committee, Mayor's Office of Cable and Communication. This is the third extension and amendment of the lease. This item deals with the lease for studio space located at 621 East Pratt Street. We had this morning with us Mr. Andy Frank, Director of Office of Real Estate, which is located in the Comptroller's office, to give a brief explanation to this item. Mr. Frank, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. President and honorable members of the board. I'm Andy Frank, Acting Real Estate Officer. Board of Estimates is being asked this morning to approve a third extension and amendment to an existing lease between the Mayor and City Council on behalf of Mayor's Office of Cable and Communications and the landlord called Cordish Power Plant Number 2 for 621 East Pratt Street. For orientation, 621 East Pratt Street is the building in the Inner Harbor that is next to and immediately south of the power plant's Hard Rock Cafe. By way of background, MOCC has been subject to the terms of this lease since July of 1996, when MOCC first moved into 34 Marketplace. Some of you might remember it used to be called the Brokerage, and now it's called Power Plant Live. When MOCC moved into 34 Marketplace in 1996, the building was actually owned by the city. Now owned by the Cordish Company, 34 Marketplace is on the east side of downtown across from Port Discovery's Children's Museum. In June of 2019, the Cordish Company, with MOCC's cooperation, relocated MOCC's studio, editing suite, office space, and storage to 621 East Pratt Street to accommodate a growing tenant in 34 Marketplace. This relocation allowed MOCC to complete 2 years left on its original lease, which again started at 34 Marketplace. The terms of the new lease are, it's a 5-year extension. The rent is $20 a square foot for 10,044 square feet, increasing 3% annually. It's important to note that this rent is pegged against the previous Class B rent in 34 Marketplace and not against the asking rent in 621 East Pratt Street, considered a Class A building in a Class A location, which is in the mid to high 20s. The tenant will pay utilities, and this part is important. MOCC will have the right to terminate after 2 years if MOCC finds another suitable property within the city owned by the city. That completes my introduction of the item. Calvin Harris is here from MOCC, who can also answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from any members of the board? I know this item was pulled to non-routine by the Comptroller's Office to provide transparency associated with this particular deal. I'm not seeing any hands or hearing anyone with any questions or concerns. If that is the case, at this point, I'll move forward for a motion.
Move approval.
I second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving this item on non-routine agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved.
Thank you.
Next. Thank you. Mr. Frank, Ms. Harris, you are free to go, or you're free to hang out with us. Thank you. The next and last item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 50 through 51. Department of Finance, fiscal year 22, Visit Baltimore Incorporated, Baltimore Tourism Improvement District Financial Plan and Special Assessment Rate. A protest was received on this item by the Baltimore African American Tourism Council Incorporated. We'll first hear from Bob Sinemy of the Department of Finance, who will briefly walk us through this item. Then we will hear from Mr. Lewis Fields, the maker of the protest, and additional members from the community who have found issue with this particular item. At this point, is Director Sinemy on? Is anyone on from Finance?
Good-
Hey,
I'm sorry.
Director. Hello, Director Raymond. How are you doing?
Good.
You're going to speak for Finance on this particular issue, Director?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So
Good morning.
I yield the floor to you, Director Raymond.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Controller Henry, honorable members of the board. I'm Henry Raymond, Director of Finance. Several comments I'd like to make. First of all, Mayor Scott and this administration are totally committed to the concept of diversity, inclusion, and equity. This is paramount for this mayor's administration. Visit Baltimore is in complete compliance with all statutory requirements related to the fiscal 22 assessment. Some of the items from the protest question the boundary of the district. By law, the district is defined as the city's corporate boundaries. The protest also has a question about the advertising that's required. The advertising was implemented in accordance with the law, which is circulation of a general paper. The time frame was met. The next item was question about meeting MBE, WBE goals. There are goals within the law stating that MBE, WBE policies by the city have to be adhered to by Visit Baltimore as it relates to the 3.5 million, the fiscal 22 budget special assessment. So that's not an issue. So everything Visit Baltimore is doing is in compliance with the law. And finally, I'd like to add that the District Management Committee is made up of a diverse group of the I may pronounce this wrong, the hoteliers, the owners of the hotels that represent management on the District Management Committee. This group is definitely able to determine the type of marketing, sales, and destination event strategies to improve local tourism. I recommend to the Board of Estimates that the Baltimore Tourism District budget as presented be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Raymond. At this time, are there any questions or concerns from any members of the board for Director Raymond in Finance? Hearing and seeing none, I'll direct the board's attention. I believe we received a protest letter. You all should have received it a day or two ago from Mr. Lewis Fields. At this point, I'm going to call on Mr. Fields to address the board with any of your concerns. If you could, please direct the concerns specific to this issue and bring any relevant facts that you would like the board to weigh in as it relates to this particular item. Mr. Fields, I yield the floor to you. Mr. Fields, I believe you're on mute. We can see you, but we can't hear you yet. That's better.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to the members of the board. We really appreciate beyond measure this opportunity to speak to this opportunity. And if I could, I'd like to introduce myself properly to the members of the board and other guests who may not know the work that we have been doing. My name is Lewis Fields, and I am the co-founder of the Baltimore African American Tourism Council of Maryland. We started in 1996. Our mission is to educate, research, preserve, and protect and promote Maryland's African American historical sites, especially in Baltimore, and then to use that particular effort to stimulate tourism in Baltimore. Over the years, I think this is at least my 23rd year. I started as a volunteer. And over the last 2 decades, we have entertained thousands of tourists, hundreds of family reunions, served corporate America, and even when there's only one person on a tour, Mr. President, we do not decline that request. Although we can't make money doing a tour for 1 or 2 people. Over our 20-year career, we've never turned down a request for a tour, no matter how many people. And so during the tours, we get feedback from the tourists. We get feedback from the tourists as they go through the Inner Harbor and Pratt Street and Fells Point and Federal Hill, and then they go uptown, if you will, to the African American historical sites and places in our community that these tourists, be they white, be they black, be they American, be they international, they want to see these particular places. They want to see these particular sites. So in so doing, over our 20-year career, we have established the Frederick Douglass Tour in Fells Point, 21 years running, the Frederick Douglass Tour in Fells Point, Harriet Tubman Day in the state of Maryland, Leon Day Park in West Baltimore. The list is endless that we've been able to achieve as an unfunded nonprofit tourism organization in the city of Baltimore. And our talk today is to speak to the Baltimore Tourism District. And if we were to look at the district and look at it nationally, what these tourism districts have been able to do in the last 30 years. It began in Hollywood, California in 1989. Since then, over 150 cities have utilized some type of tourism improvement district with a special assessment rate that's not paid by the city, not paid by the hoteliers, but paid by the guests who overnight in the hotels. Places like San Diego, Las Vegas, Denver, Colorado, other cities around the country have now begun allocating these tourism improvement funds to other tourism-related items and expenditures, including but other than tourism marketing. These funds now have been directed to fund convention center expansion, visitor center budgeting, chambers of commerce, district development, arts, culture, and educational opportunities and activities, and entrepreneurs that support tourism. Now, on the downside, there is a downside to creating these new surcharges when the customer gets his hotel bill. Some have complained about these hidden and undisclosed fees when all of a sudden they get their hotel bill and they see a new surcharge that no one was aware was going to be there. I have records of those complaints from all over the country when people have tried to do this. But that's not the case today. What I want you to look at today, let's look at other states around the country and how they have used, Mr. President, tourism improvement districts to improve their city as it relates to what they allocate the dollars for. One city has taken $7 million of tourism improvement district funding to help contractors produce events. Even some of the Baltimore Tourism Improvement District funding is designed to help create bigger events in Baltimore. No African Americans though. In Denver, Colorado, they took almost $1 million and set it aside for capital improvements out of their tourism improvement district funds. In San Francisco, they used a tourism improvement district to finance a $1.6 billion expansion of the Las Vegas Convention Center. San Francisco has done the same thing, and on it goes. And so when we look at Baltimore's tourism improvement district bill as it relates today, we advocated for an inclusion to create an African American Tourism Development Fund. Because why? Our historical places, sites, and business opportunities are the only unfunded tourism subsidies in the city of Baltimore. If you look at what we have done in Baltimore prior to COVID, the Baltimore City tourism industry has supported and subsidized not just hotels, but also certain entities. However, in the past, prior to COVID, very few of those dollars have went to the African American tourism community. This is prior to COVID. We see millions of dollars yearly in tourism-related items going everywhere in the city except to Black stakeholders, African American. Sometimes it's up to $100 million. Even in this year's budget, the first city budget prior, the first city budget prior to COVID being completely erased, in this budget, there are millions of dollars for tourism subsidies. Again, we are not included in that money. Recently, in November of 2020, there was a big tourism spend, but we weren't included. Only inclusion we got, Mr. President, someone asked me to take a big box of these masks and distribute them to the tourism industry, which I did, because I'm a supporter of tourism and a supporter of Visit Baltimore. But as we move forward, we're still in COVID. And what we're asking for today is for all of you to look at how do we create diversity, equity, and inclusion as we try to get out of COVID and bring tourism back to Baltimore City. When you look at the fact that Visit Baltimore is the promotional arm of the city, but that does not give them leeway to say all tourism dollars has to stay in their hands and have them be able to implement what they see as a part of their marketing inclusion for African American tourism. Here today, we're not simply talking about marketing. We're talking about the African American historical sites that need additional funding. Here in the past, we were never eligible, couldn't qualify, much during the COVID, African American tourism. We haven't been able to qualify for PPE loans or any of that, basically because some of our organizations, like mine, we're unpaid and we have no payroll, so we couldn't qualify. When we did apply for some of the city funding that came through BDC, I personally was turned down twice. So think about that. Since March 2020, a person like myself in tourism has been halted, dead halt. So the last 18 months, myself and many others, we've had no income. And so today, as we look at Baltimore trying to move forward, forget about the missteps of the past, let's move forward, but let's move forward in a more equitable way. When we look at the projected $3.5 million, and mind you, that could go up to $10 million, even higher. And when we look at the fact the city of Baltimore will retain 1.5%, and Visit Baltimore has another 98% of those funds. In addition to the tourism subsidy, the city is already mandated to give tourism dollars to Visit Baltimore. What we are requesting is an equitable field that says a portion of these new dollars, Mr. President and members of the board, could be and should be set aside to grow the growth and development of African American tourism in Baltimore. Why? Because that same tourist who goes down Pratt Street and say, Lewis, take us up Pennsylvania Avenue, there's a big drop off there. And one of the major reasons there is no designated allocated funding for our issues and our causes. Even during COVID, we have maintained our dignity, we have struggled. We have looked at millions of dollars going here and there. Everybody's been able to get some help. And we have sit here and watch no help come our way. Now we see in COVID, during COVID, June 2021, a city budget. We're not included. Nobody has made any complaints. We ain't jump up and down and complain about it because we understand the constraints of the city budget coming out of COVID. But now when we look at a new piece of money, a new pot of money, we should be included. In fact, I believe it's in the best interest of the city of Baltimore to not only include our needs in this particular new money, but to make sure more people than just the district management committee made of hoteliers who have very little stake and very little interest in our city beyond the Inner Harbor and who comes through their doors. This is a fact. It's not a mistake. You can look around and you can see how things look when you talk about, well, let's take people uptown to the Arena Players. Let's go over to the Great Blacks and Whites. Let's go throughout our city. And when we see tourism generating $10 billion of economic impact, we see other major events generating major economic impact. The question becomes, how does that materialize itself in our African-American tourism community? Are we getting better than we were before COVID, or are we worse off? This is what the tourists will be asking us. And so what I want to suggest is that we consider the board. We have asked for 7.3% of this tourism improvement district money. In this case, when you have a total budget of $3.5 million projected, the city of Baltimore gets 1.5%, which is $50-some thousand. We believe Visit Baltimore receiving 7% less than their 98.5% would not detract from them to achieve their goals of continually marketing the city of Baltimore with this extra money, because as I stated, they already still have the current budget in hand. And so when you look around the country, cities have found ways to use this kind of funding for more than just tourism marketing. Cities have found ways to make sure the minority community is included. And if we are not included in the legislation and you give complete authority over 98% of this new money to a quasi-city organization, who has oversight of them? Who has the right to say, let's see how you actually spent the money, as we saw what happened in November of 2020. This is what we're looking at here. And if our city is to heal, we can heal when people of color sit back and see millions of dollars going everywhere except to us in our own city. So we're not asking to cause any big major problems here. We're just asking for inclusion, diversity, and I have other people who want to speak and share their thoughts, and I have so much information I can share with you folks on this particular topic, but I don't want to hog the time up. All I'm asking for is for Baltimore City, fiscal year 2022, let's not create a new position that's going to create even more bitterness. Because if you keep leaving people out, that's when we see problems. Everybody has to be included if we all have a stake. We are cultural assets to the tourism industry. We help support the tourism efforts of Visit Baltimore, but we have to look at using tourism dollars for more than just marketing. Marketing, we need it, but you can't keep marketing a part of the city that the tourists are demanding to go to, and it looks like it has looked for the last 30 years. So our thought today is, let's be inclusionary and not exclusionary. And if Visit Baltimore is going to get $3.5 million, and our request for $255,000 as a set aside for African Americans, they still have over $3 million. And I guarantee you, that is a low ball projection. This pot of money could go to 10 million, 20 million, 30 million. And the question becomes, when those dollars go through the city coffers, who at City Hall is going to protect the interests of not just Pratt Street, not just hoteliers, but people like myself who have been in the field for years and years trying to do tourism projects, but we never could see any support. So I'm going to close there and just leave it for any questions anyone may have. And I just think it's time for Baltimore to make sure we are included. Thank you, Mr. President, and everyone else.
No, thank you, Mr. Fields. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board to Mr. Fields? Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Fields.
Good morning, sir.
You're asking us for 7.3% of the Baltimore Tourism Improvement District funds. Have you put in a formal proposal or request to Visit Baltimore for
Yes,
this already?
Yes, we actually put in these proposal when the bill was on
Okay,
first reader, second reader, and third reader. And
right.
the third reader, it stopped. And then we had a person, a city council person who was representing our interests, met with Visit Baltimore. They made some concessions. And at that time, we felt, as opposed to trying to stop the legislation, let's see how it unfolds. But then 2020 happened and the COVID happened. And then we began to see some pledges were kept, some were not. And at this point, we believe that 7.3% is not an overly abundant amount of funds to help Black folks in our city.
Okay, so are you characterizing the 7.3% that you're asking for as one of the things that Visit Baltimore had promised to do back when the legislation was being considered by the council, and now you're asking that that commitment be kept?
No, no, sir. Visit Baltimore was adamant against the 7.3%, but in good faith, trying to make sure our city moved forward from 2019, there were some concessions stated, and we began to try to heal and mend and work together. But after seeing how we were just left out in the cold during 2020, and now we are at a point to restart tourism, and for the African American community to have to restart our tourism efforts, and there's no place for us to really get any significant help. Visit Baltimore job is not to help us. We understand that. Their job is marketing.
So you had also mentioned that you had applied for different grant programs that had happened during the pandemic, and you had not received any funding from them. Did anybody reach out to you to explain what you needed to change about your organization to qualify for these funds?
Well, I'm just representing myself. Other people can tell their own stories. One of the issues we had with the funding from the city of Baltimore, it was limited, number one. And then one of my applications was turned down because of my home office address was not in the downtown district, although I've been doing tourism in the downtown district. The second one, BDC said they just didn't have enough money to go around. And so if you think about that, I'm a full-time tourism operator, an asset to the city for over 20 years. And then in March 2020, my entire business operation is completely shut down.
Right.
From March 2020 to June of 2021. So it's been a real struggle, and we don't want to see going forward this much house. I guess it's just been really a hardship for us. And, you know, we are dignified people. No one from Visit Baltimore, no one from City of Baltimore administration has had any calls tooting our horn, talking about how much our need are. We just sacrifice. We have sacrificed for the last 18 months. And I do believe if there's new money to be had, particularly if it's not coming out of the city budget, it's not coming out of Visit Baltimore's budget, it's not even coming out of the hotelier's budget. This new money is new money not impacting any of those three entities. This is the perfect opportunity for Visit Baltimore to say yes, as opposed to opposing this request.
Mr. President, the other question that I had, I think is either for Finance or Visit Baltimore. I wanted to follow up on Director Raymond's comments about Visit Baltimore being subject to MBE, WBE goals and provisions. I'm not sure whether to follow up,
Yeah,
though.
this is-
The floor is yours. So if you would like to now rope in Finance, please do so.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Director Raymond, you had mentioned that that Visit Baltimore was subject to MBE, WBE provisions. The reason I wanted to follow up on that is I'm looking at the budget for FY22 that is part of the agenda for this item. And I am seeing specifically under the admin and operations section, the safety and security line item specifies Wolf Security for $169,000 coming out of this budget. What I wanted to confirm is, does that mean that Visit Baltimore had to or will have to go through a procurement process to pick a security company, and there will be an opportunity for the MBU to put goals on that contract for MBE and WBE participation? Or does that mean that since they already have Wolf listed, they're in the middle of a contract, an existing contract with Wolf Security, and they're just going to use $169,000 of this money towards what they're already paying Wolf? That's why I wasn't sure if this was a question for finance or a question for Visit Baltimore.
Well, I'll address part of it and allow Mr. Hutchinson to go into greater detail on the specific contractor. In accordance with Article 14, Section 20, there's specific language that there will be compliance with MBE, WBE city policies. So there would be coordination with the law department's MBU office on goal setting.
Okay. Then maybe I do need to talk to Mr. Hutchinson about the specifics of what's in the budget that's before us. Is he available? I'm sorry, I can only see limited. No, there we go.
I'm
Hey
here.
there, Mr. Hutchinson, how are you?
I'm good, Mr. Comptroller.
So can you talk a little bit about the safety and security line, especially in the context of, is this a standalone thing for the Tourism Improvement District, or is this somehow fit into a larger line item for Visit Baltimore as a whole?
Well, in reference to Wolf Security, it's a standalone. It's something within the CBD for meetings and conventions that are coming to Baltimore. We felt we needed some additional presence of security, and the TID, they were willing, the hoteliers who govern the money were willing to pay for the security for this particular initiative.
And was this done through the city's procurement system?
No, sir.
This was
No, sir.
this was done by Visit Baltimore.
Correct.
Did you send the RFP or whatever you put out to the city's MBU office to?
I don't believe in this case, Mr. Comptroller, we needed to do that because of the way Visit Baltimore is set up, being quasi through this particular method. We did not have to go through the city's procurement process for that. But keep in mind, everything that we do as an entity, we look at it through an equity lens and making sure that women-owned and minority-owned vendors are sought out and trying to find vendors for services that we need.
Well, the reason I'm raising this question is not just in terms of following up on Mr. Fields' concerns, but they dovetail rather well with some concerns that the city is dealing with about armed versus unarmed security, and how the city contracts with such companies, and perhaps more importantly, how we select, and how the city's MBE and WBE guidelines are applied to that selection process. So were there MBE or WBE goals for the security contract?
Not for the security contract, no, sir.
Is that because MBU provided a waiver, or you didn't send this? You didn't have to. You didn't feel you had to send this to MBU to get. I'm sorry, Mr. Raymond.
Yeah, let me clarify.
Okay.
in accordance with section 20-5B10, contract for and purchase goods and services in accordance with city ordinances and policy requiring achievement of goals regarding minority and women's business enterprises. Now, that is the process, but I misspoke when I said that it had to go through the city law department MBU office. It does not. But in accordance with Article 14, as it relates to contracting for goods and services, Visit Baltimore would look at opportunities for MBE, WBE participation, but I want to stand corrected
Okay.
where I misspoke that it had to go through the MBU office.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's, and I understand how confusing it gets with the quasis. I'm with you on that. What that takes us back to, however, is it takes us back to Mr. Fields' concern that this is effectively the city collecting $3.5 million worth of money from all tourists, across the board, and providing all but $52,500, which is coming back to the city for administrative purposes. All of that money is going to Visit Baltimore, and we probably could have another conversation on another day where Mr. Hutchinson briefs the board on the full gamut of Visit Baltimore's equity goals. But I do understand and appreciate Mr. Fields' concern that when that almost $3.5 million leaves the city and goes to Visit Baltimore, it also leaves behind the legal requirement of our MBE WBE program and moves into the realm of what Visit Baltimore chooses to do in their own personal efforts to pursue equity, as opposed to meeting a specific legal requirement. Is that accurate? Am I following this properly?
I would say the special benefit district, as it relates to Baltimore Tourism Improvement District, is set up the same way as the other special benefit districts.
Right.
It's all the same.
Which does raise a larger equity question, and Mr. Mayor, maybe this is something that we should ask the chief equity officer to make sure is on her radar, is that for all of these organizations where the city is collecting money from taxpayers and then funneling that money to specific organizations for their purposes, as good as those purposes may be, there is a question of how subject should they be to either the city's existing MBE, WBE requirements, or maybe part of the city functioning as a pass-through for these organizations should entail a legal requirement that these organizations develop their own MBE, WBE programs that they administer that may or may not be simpler or easier than simply using the city's process. But it does feel like maybe this is a missed opportunity in the past that we have an opportunity to address moving forward. And then, Mr. President, the last thing I just wanted to point out, and this is more of a note for Mr. Hutchinson as Visit Baltimore moves forward in working with Mr. Fields and the African American tourism community. I would point out that the $255,500 that they were requesting as 7.3% of the total budget. That is less than the $285,500 you have in your budget for contingency. And if there is well over $250,000 in a $3.5 million budget for contingency, I would think that there would be some room to work out an arrangement with Mr. Fields and the African American tourism community to address some of the, I think, very valid concerns that they've raised. And that's just a note. I understand this is not something that the board can require, and I'm not going to try to make this a formal thing. I'm just putting that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Mr. Hutchinson, before we get into the other members of the community that would like to speak on this item, I think I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the Mr. Comptroller's question. Everything that Visit Baltimore has done, this is not Visit Baltimore's money, first of all. This was the only reason this district was set up was because the hotel community agreed to assess themselves. Mr. Fields is correct. The money comes from visitors. However, that's what we're trying to do to get more visitors to the community. But the hotels in Baltimore City agreed to do that. All hotels agreed to do it. But now the governance of 9 hotels, they determine how the money is spent, not Visit Baltimore. We put the budget together. However, the 9-person governance group, one hotel, the Ivy Hotel, Eddie and Sylvia Brown's hotel, is a part of this governance. The Pendry Hotel with an African-American GM, the Hyatt Regency with an African-American GM. So we have an equity lens on what we do, but this money is money that the hotel industry assessed themselves, not any other entity, no restaurant, no museum. The hotel community did that. And the reason they did it was to drive additional revenue to market a city that does not have the proper resources to be competitive. All those cities that Mr. Fields outlined have had a TID, except for Philadelphia, have had it for 5+ years. We have not even had it a year because 2020 COVID hit. So if we want to be very sincere with the request, then we need to give this district the opportunity to gain some steam and money. There's very little revenue that has been generated. The hotels, along with Visit Baltimore's team, are definitely looking at how to move Baltimore from an equity perspective. And I will say to you, in 2020, part of the money was to create a new Baltimore brand story. And if you all have seen the rebranding that's done, it is a very people of color focused brand messaging. And a lot of the folks on that, the copywriter, Kondwani Fidel, an East Baltimore person, was a part of that. And Devin Allen, the photographer, was a part of that. So we have been reaching out to vendors and the person of color community to get compensated to help us to retell the Baltimore story. The TID is set up to better market Baltimore. It's not there to be writing checks to entities, but it's there to help market and bring people in to help us. We can partner with folks to help tell the Baltimore story in a better way and to market the community better so we can be more competitive and also give a better experience when we're moving forward. So a lot of what we've been doing, from creating neighborhood messaging, storytelling, all of that's part of this Baltimore story through the TID. But our role is to make sure we broaden the pie. When Mr. Fields continues to say his organization, I'm sort of clueless on what that is or who that is. We do partner and tell the story for the Great Blacks in Wax. We do it for the Reginald Lewis. We do it for entities. We market them when they don't have the resources to market themselves. So that's what this TID was set up to do, to market and tell the story so we can drive visitors here to use our product, to use our assets, not just hotels, but all of our assets. But that was the main intent of it, so we could be competitive to bring more visitors in. And it's going to take us a while because the last 15 months, no one has been traveling. So it's going to take a while for this fund to really to grow the base the way we want it to grow. And it's definitely going to take some months for that to gear back up.
Thank you, President Hutchinson. As discussed, we have 3 other members from the public who would like to speak on behalf of this issue. I think everyone on this call today can agree that historically African-American historical sites as well as cultural institutions have been disproportionately funded. I think that it's our job to help play catch up and ensure that the playing field is level and even, particularly knowing that Baltimore is home to some of the richest African-American history in the land. When we talk about per capita, per square mile, I'm not sure that you can identify locations with the type of history that we have here. Again, we want to provide respect to members of the community that came to speak and talk today. I believe Mr. Derek Vaughn, you've been on the line waiting. Mr. Vaughn, Mr. Lou Fields was the official protester of today. That's why we provided him with limited time to kind of speak specific to the issues and needs. For the next 3 residents, I'm going to ask that you keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less and just try to provide any areas that have not been spoken of as it relates to Mr. Fields' testimony or any of the comments made by the board today. So, Mr. Vaughn, I have you up first. Mr. Vaughn, the floor is yours. Mr. Vaughn, are you still with us? I know you checked in earlier. I still see your name. Okay, we're going to go to Ms. Rosenberg. Ms. Rosenberg, are you here to speak? I haven't seen you check in. Matt, if you could see if she is on a different list. Is that you, Ms. Rosenberg? That is you. The floor is yours, Ms. Rosenberg.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear and we can see you, Ms. Rosenberg.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you all. I'm speaking from New York. I'm a New York resident who came to visit Baltimore back before the pandemic, related to a research project that I have. I'm a fellow from the Rutgers Institute of Jazz Studies working on the jazz history of Baltimore. And I think it's an amazing city, and very, very much from what you've been saying, that the African-American history of Baltimore is just, it's almost like nowhere else in this country, and certainly not in the world. So I think that you have a great opportunity here. I'm speaking in support of what Mr. Fields is presenting to you today. And I'd like to encourage you to support him and his organization and many other organizations like it. I understand that in the era of COVID, things are going to perhaps start slowly, but it may be 2 things that I'd like to suggest to you. An issue of publicity. So with the Visit Baltimore website, there aren't that many areas of that website that focus on African-American tourism, either of Baltimore or Maryland. So that may be something to ask the group to look at. It may be also thinking outside the box a little bit. It may be an opportunity to give grants to individual groups or individuals like Mr. Fields, who's really an asset to the city of Baltimore. He's essentially for years been giving the city free publicity through his tours and his activism. So as a visitor of Baltimore, as somebody who loves to visit and hopes to visit again, and spend money there and tell people about how wonderful it is, I see that there can be improvements to the way that the city funds through itself, and also through these entities like Visit Baltimore, the African-American historical sites and individuals who are promoting those sites.
You're on mute, Mr. President.
Had to change scenes. We have another hearing going on in the council, so I had to move. Thank you, Ms. Rosenberg. You finished 40 seconds short of the 3 minutes. We appreciate you sticking with the time. At this point, are there any questions or concerns for Ms. Rosenberg as she gives her testimony from New York? Well, thank you so much. We hope that you continue to come back to Baltimore and visit Baltimore, spread the word to all your family, friends, and colleagues and associates. Again, you're free to stay on and see the outcome of this, but ask that you continue to participate in the dealings associated with this, particularly you being a subject matter expert in your field. So thank you so much, Ms. Rosenberg. Next up, do we still have Mr. Vaughn? Is he on? Has he been able to come through? I still see him on the line, but unfortunately, maybe he is preoccupied with something else. Last up is Miss Brenda Tucker. Miss Brenda Tucker, are you available to speak at this time? I did not hear from Miss Brenda Tucker at the beginning, so I do not think she's on the line. I think that some important things have been raised today. I don't know if this is the vehicle. I do know that there is a significant problem. We've seen a problem. I think particularly for the electeds, be it the comptroller and the mayor, we understand and know the historical disinvestment. I think us being in these positions now, it's important for us to kind of turn that tide. You know, obviously situations like COVID have further compounded kind of the situations that, you know, many of our cultural arts institutions in African-American communities have faced. And, you know, it's our job to continue to work to try to better them. I'm going to ask with some of the questions associated with the MBE goals as it relates to some of the involvement as it relates to this particular budget, that we defer this item just a week to the next scheduled meeting. That'll give us an opportunity to follow up with questions with Visit Baltimore, as well as finance. I'm pretty sure you probably have some additional burning questions, Mr. Comptroller. I know I have some additional questions. So with that, I'm just going to ask the board that we defer this to the next meeting. And we can follow up with any questions or concerns for other members of the agency. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to everyone who came in. Mr. Lewis, always good to see you. I think that we've all heard and we know, and what I'll just simply say, I know that Mr. Fields recently was introduced to our new Deputy Mayor for Economic Development. We will be making sure that we work to undo, Mr. President, and invest in the history of Baltimore in its totality. When you think, you and I in particular, we know about how much it meant for us growing up to go to the Blacks and Blacks or go to arena players to see a play. And what we're going to be doing through this administration, through this term, and working in partnership with our partners here today on the board, is figuring out how we can bolster those organizations in a deep way. So that's all I would say before we close.
Got you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to say before we close.
Hello, Mr. Derek Vaughn from the Chomtastic Mile. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, Mr. Vaughn.
Yes, can you hear me? I think I was muted. I'm sorry. I didn't get a chance. I thought
We've been trying to call you on for the past 15 minutes, Mr. Vaughn. At this point,
you can hear me. But
Yeah.
I think I was muted. I'm sorry. I wasn't. I thought because I could hear all of you. I heard Mr. Hutchinson. I heard Mr. Mayor, Mr. Controller.
yes,
you, sir.
Mr. Vaughn, I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak. All right. So at this point, you have 3 minutes to speak. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Starting now.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. My name is Derek E. Vaughn with the Chomtastic Mile of Baltimore. Just to give you a little insight on the Chomtastic Mile, we are the ceremonial honorary 1.3 mile corridor that connects downtown West, Inner Harbor, and Harbor East. We were first introduced to the city in 2016. What we wanted to do is bring an iconic, famous street to the city of Baltimore. Just like other large metropolitan cities, they have that famous street that is known only by its name, and of course it becomes an extension brand of the city. Now, of course, Charm City, which was coined in 1975 by the late, great William Donald Schaefer, this is the evolution of the Charm City name. So the Chomtastic Mile is seeking to become one of the top 10 to 15 most iconic famous streets in the city and in the country. And what that will do is help the overall brand of the city, profile of the city, and also bring more commerce to the city. Now, I was asked to come and speak on behalf of African American tourism, which I have a great deal of respect and admiration for Louis Fields and for all his efforts. But my thing is that I believe that this is going to become more of an international hub, and by having that iconic famous street is going to help all businesses, whether it be restaurants, hotels, shops, and other businesses that are on or near the 1.3 mile corridor of the Charmtastic Mile. Now, far as the visibility of the mile, I think we're starting to get more and more visibility. We're starting to get more recognition of it. But I would like to work actually with Visit Baltimore and downtown partnership. I believe that we could become an asset to them as well as an asset to the city, as an asset to the hotels, restaurants, and to the residents and the tourists that come, not just in the region, but all around the country and all around the world.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Vaughn. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board for Mr. Vaughn? Hearing and seeing none, as discussed prior to Mr. Vaughn's presentation testimony to us, I'm going to ask that we defer this item one meeting. I would like to first thank Mr. Fields for your relentless advocacy for African American history here in the city of Baltimore. I've not only been able to see it in the halls of City Hall, but also in Annapolis, where in certain districts we significantly increased the amount of capital improvements to our African American cultural centers, one being the Arena Players. So again, thank you for your just consistent, relentless appreciation for the importance of us keeping to the history, as well as proportionally ensuring that we protect it for generations to come. With that, if there is no additional items or concerns or questions from the board, I'm going to go to recess. Hearing and seeing none, as there's no more business at the desk before this board, we will recess until bid opening at 12 noon. The Board of Estimates will reconvene on Wednesday, June the 23rd at 9 a.m. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, please continue to stay safe. Please continue to follow all health protocols as it relates to COVID-19 pandemic. Baltimore, we love you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
I forgot my tie.
Oh, let's see. Well, I don't think we have any choice but to let you stay anyway. The dress code for the board is a little lacking here. I do like the fact that we have covered the spectrum here, where Darnell is the fully dressed with the coat and the tie. Okay, I'm holding up the tie concept, but I've ditched the jacket, and Matt is just full on comfortable casual.
Well, that's what I prefer.
The very picture of the working executive.
I did this for you all. I'm a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops guy.
I wore ties since I was fourth grade, so it's
Yeah.
when I can take it off, I take it.
I'm in touch with that emotion. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Good afternoon. The Board of Estimates is now in session for the receiving and opening of bids. As part of the overall effort to limit transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the Board of Estimates is conducting bid openings virtually. Members of the public can call in to listen to bid openings live by calling 443-984-1696 and entering access code 0842939. Board of Estimates meetings are broadcast live on Charm TV, channel 25 on Comcast Cable in Baltimore City. Meetings are also streamed on the internet at https://www.charmtvbaltimore.com/live-stream. The Board of Estimates will continue to conduct bid openings virtually while the state of emergency declared by the Mayor of Baltimore and the Governor of Maryland remains in effect.
I have the following addendum to note. Department of Public Works, WC 1285, Caroline Street and vicinity water main replacement. Please change the bid due date from June 16th, 2021 to June 23rd, 2021. Thank you.
Move that that item be noted for the record.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. All right, the first bid before us, DOT TR 21007, curb repair citywide, with a bid bond of 2% if the bid is over $100,000. The first bid is from LF Mahoney Incorporated with a bid bond and a total bid of $747,550 and no cents. The next bid is from, oh good grief, Manuel Luis Construction Company Incorporated with a bid bond and a total bid of $674,147.75. The next bid is by J Villa Construction Incorporated with a bid bond and a total bid of $605,000. The next bid is from ECM Corporation with a bid bond and a total bid amount of $677,565 and no cents. The next bid is from ENR Services Incorporated with a bid bond and a total bid of $595,606.00. And the last bid on this proposal is by Santos Construction Company with a bid bond. The total contract dollar amount of $784,245. Okay.
I move that these bids be sent to the Department of Transportation for review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next proposal is TR 21008, ADA ramps citywide. All right, the first bid is from, I'm sorry, this also has a bid bond of 2% if the bid is over $100,000. And the first bid is from Anchor Construction Corporation with a bid bond and a bid amount of that isn't right. Sorry. There we go. Sorry. $703,301 and no cents. All right. The next bid is by J Via Construction Incorporated with a bid bond. Missing the. All right, thank you. Oh, here it is. No, that's not. That's. I'm getting close. I see the grid. Okay. A total bid of $470,000. No cents. Next bid is by the ECM Corporation with a bid bond and a total bid of $549,960 and no cents. The next bid is by ENR Services Incorporated with a bid bond. Oh, there's the bid bond. With a total bid of $494,724.00. The next bid is by Monumental Paving and Excavating Incorporated with a bid bond and a total bid of $649,799 and no cents. Next bid is by Santos Construction Company Incorporated with a bid bond. All right. And a total bid of $549,787 and no cents. And the final bid is by Manuel Luis Construction Company Incorporated with a bid bond. And a total bid of $584,846.23.
I move that these bids are transmitted to the Department of Transportation for review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is proposal SC 1002, cleaning and inspection of sanitary sewers in Baltimore City, citywide. There is a 2% bid bond if the bid is over $100,000. good, goodly muggly. All right. All right, this first bid is from Spinello Companies. With a bid bond. And a total bid amount of $4,763,300 and no cents. The next bid is by Mobile Dredging and Video Pipe with a bid bond. And a total bid of $7,100,350.00. Ooh. Ah. Hope that's the bid bond on top. All right. It's a check.
Yeah.
All right. And the final bid is by Riviera Enterprises Incorporated.
They have a check.
With a check. And a total bid amount of $7,027,550.
27,000?
Oop.
I'm sorry. Can you?
Yeah, I'm sorry too. Hold on. $7,027,550 and no cents.
$550.
Yep. 7027550.
Thank you, sir. I move that these bids are sent to the Department of Public Works for review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then our fourth and final proposal today is for GS 21807, War Memorial Building roof replacement and repairs. There is not a bid bond applicable for this. The bid is from Alliance Exterior Construction, in the amount of $2,359,600 and no cents. Oh, and I didn't pass you anything because there's your duplicate. Sorry. Let's try that again. It's Alliance Exterior Construction with a bid amount of $2,359,600 and no cents.
I move that this bid is sent to the Department of General Services for review.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That being all the business before us, we are going to recess until the next Board of Estimates meeting Wednesday. Oh, goodness. That would make it June 22nd?
June 23rd.
June 23rd. Next Wednesday, June 23rd at 9 a.m. Thank you very much, and stay safe.